How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network. We welcome you back to our Season 4, Week 12 around the NCAA recap show. Your Pitt Panthers coming off a very tight, hard-fought victory against the Duke Blue Devils, where we were only able to escape with a 13-10 victory on the back of 10 unanswered points in the third quarter. Kenny Pickett with a 1-yard touchdown run, making up for the fact that he threw an interception that went for a touchdown in the second quarter. Only 2 touchdowns scored in the entire game. Pickett's touchdown was the only offensive one. He had a nice game, though. Threw for 235 yards, only 22 of 41 passing, so a good number of incompletions. We weren't great on third down, but a lot of it was due to the fact that our rushing game was terrible again. 31 total carries for 65 yards. When we got in the red zone, we were pretty good with the football. Thankfully for us, our defense was fantastic. We did give up 150 yards on the ground, but only 94 passing yards against. Held Duke to 6 of 16 on third downs, and we forced 3 turnovers as well. So just a fantastic performance overall. You can see rushing-wise, CJ London had an okay game, 40 yards on 9 carries. Sibley struggled again, 29 yards on 10 carries. Pickett did have a touchdown run, but he didn't even have positive rushing yardage due to sacks and stuff like that. And then, of course, receiving-wise, another good game from Maurice French. I thought Paul Lease had a nice game. Antonio Greer had 4 catches, but he also had 3 drops, so a tough day for him. But the big star of this day was Paris Ford. 10 tackles, 1 for a loss, 1 pick, and a pass deflected. Fantastic game by him. Keyshawn Camp did have 3 sacks as well, as we had 7 total sacks on the day, and Camp did force a fumble. So he had a nice game as well. Ronnie Baker recovered that fumble, and he had a sack. Sean Wolfgang had a sack. Now, some things that did happen. We did lose Kenny Pickett to a foot injury in this game. We also lost Sean Wolfgang, our starting defensive end, to a hip injury in this game, but both guys should be okay to play next week. They should be able to rebound from those injuries and be able to play next week. So we'll expect to see them in our upcoming game. Nothing should be too lingering from those effects, though you may see, Pickett being taped up or something like that, just as a precaution for the injury to hopefully not resume. But some other great news: we did escape with the win, and we got a commit out of it. Adam Vaughn, number 29 ranked defensive tackle in the country out of Linden, New Jersey, 3-star, good size. You can see it was a pretty heated recruiting battle. Boston College, Virginia, Maryland all showed interest, but he took a visit to us this week, saw what he, I'm sure, loved from our defensive line's performance, 7 sacks, and he committed on the spot following that victory. Now, we did lose out on David Paris from Maryland, as well as Dennis Williams, a 3-star corner from Maryland, who actually ended up being a +7 gem. I'd be sad about that, but his man coverage still isn't great, so he'd still be a development project. He's better as a press guy, and I don't play a lot of press coverage. David Paris, good player as well, 67 overall, went to Marshall instead, defensive end, but, we have some bigger sights for us defensive end-wise. Adam Vaughn, good signing. Only 68 overall, -2 from what he was initially projected, but he did have really good overall ratings. He was like 70s in every skill category. So he's a good development player that we should be using within a couple of seasons. Around the ACC, following this week, Virginia escaped with a victory over North Carolina to keep themselves in the ACC title division hunt. They're probably hoping for a 2-loss tie for the Coastal Division. Miami just escaped Georgia Tech. Wake, another huge game for Kendall Hinton as they blew out Louisville 49-19. Virginia Tech with a non-con victory, as does NC State over Army, who was previously 8-1. Clemson smoked Syracuse, and Florida State beats Boston College, I think, to become bowl eligible for the Noles this season. Top 25, Arkansas goes to 9-2 with a victory over Mississippi State. A great season for the Razorbacks this year. Texas smokes Baylor to go to 8-1. Kansas State is also 8-1. The Big 12 is shaping up for an incredible showdown in these last couple weeks of the season. Arkansas State wins. LSU blows out Ole Miss 49-14. Another big game for them. Michigan wins, coming off their big win over Penn State last week. And the game of the week, speaking of Penn State, they lose for the second week in a row, falling to Ohio State in Columbus, 35-25. Dwayne Haskins, 3 touchdown passes in the victory for the Buckeyes. Oklahoma smokes West Virginia in another nationally broadcast game. UCLA beats Arizona State. BYU knocks off Cincinnati. They'll probably fall out of the rankings with that loss. Houston beats Navy. Oklahoma State, still one loss for them as they beat Kansas. Auburn beats Miami to set up a big showdown with LSU this week. And UAB just keeps winning as they beat Louisiana Tech. And Adam Walton, their redshirt junior cornerback, 2 picks in that game, gets him NCAA Player of the Week. Christian Alexander in a victory for Florida International over Middle Tennessee State, 7 touchdowns. That's an incredible performance. Middle Tennessee State definitely fallen off a bit this year now that they lost their big quarterback stock still. They're just not having as big of a season. Kelly Bryant, 5 touchdowns in the victory over Syracuse for Clemson. And Keyshawn Camp, we get a bit of redemption, 3 sacks and forced a fumble. I thought Patrick Jones should have won ACC and NCAA Defensive Player of the Week last week. He didn't. Keyshawn Camp at least gets ACC Player of the Week this week. And now the Heisman watch, I think it's got to be down to a 2-man race at this point. Burrow's probably the favorite, but I don't know that it's necessarily head and shoulders anymore because Kendall Hinton has been incredible. 4 more touchdowns, 370-plus yards in a victory this week over, I think it was Louisville. Joe Burrow had another big game in beating whoever LSU beat this week, Ole Miss, I think it was. So another 5 touchdown performance for him. It's really coming down to the 2 of them in the Heisman race, I think it has to be said. And LSU, interestingly enough, after their victory, they lose the number 1 spot in the coaches poll because of the fact that Ohio State knocked off a ranked opponent in Penn State. But I think LSU will jump right back to number 1 in the polls if they win their matchup this week, as they're going to be taking on number 3 Auburn. We have a number 2 versus a number 3 matchup this week. That is going to be incredible and a huge game for UCLA. They could be the first team to clinch an undefeated regular season as they're 11-0, but they have to play number 20 USC, who has been on an absolute tear this week. UAB takes on Western Kentucky to try and stay unbeaten as well. 5 unbeatens remaining in college football this season. Pitt's up to number 11 with some of the losses in the top 10. Penn State falls back to number 13 after their loss to Ohio State. Cincinnati falls out of the top 25 with their loss. South Carolina just on the verge. And you can see USC looming there at number 20 with their huge game against UCLA. In the ACC Coastal Division crown, a lot's up for grabs here. I mean, we could technically, clinch the ACC Coastal if we win this week and Miami loses, because of the fact we'd have the tiebreakers over both Virginia Tech and Virginia. And actually, then I don't know that we necessarily clinch, because if we went 5-3. If we win, we would clinch, I should say. Yeah, we would. In the ACC Atlantic, it's basically down to Wake and NC State, because NC State just has to play Louisville this week. Wake is already 6-1 in conference. They have one last game. It's against NC State. Those teams are going to be playing each other for the ACC Coastal Division or Atlantic Division title. So it's going to be Wake or NC State versus whoever comes out of the Coastal. Hopefully, your Pitt Panthers. So week 13 around the ACC, of course, we're playing North Carolina, Florida State, Syracuse. Not as exciting ACC games there. Miami, Virginia is actually a pretty big game in the Coastal. If for some reason we were to lose to North Carolina, the winner of that game could have a chance to maybe still make the conference title game, and Miami especially would have a good chance if they win. BC takes on Clemson, Georgia Tech, Duke. So some good ACC matchups around the horn. Big matchups around the country. Penn State looking to get off the schneid. They've lost 2 in a row, and they're taking on Michigan State at home this week. Arkansas State in basically the Sun Belt Championship game, you can think of it here, as they take on Troy this week away from home. Army looking to rebound from only their second loss this season. They had won 8 in a row. They're taking on Stanford, who's number 17 in the country this week. Should be a fun game. 2 really good rushing teams going head-to-head. Miami taking on Virginia, who's got a fantastic defense. It'll be interesting to see how they do against that Miami passing attack, but that should be a great ACC game. USC at number 4 UCLA, but any home and away game between the two, they're right down the road, so there will be a plethora of USC fans there, I'm sure. They've had an incredible turnaround this season. That would really cap it off if they can knock off undefeated UCLA here right at the vital point of their season. Auburn and LSU, though, your game of the week. LSU having to go into Jordan-Hare Stadium. It's going to be a fantastic matchup. Number 1 defense versus number 1 offense. It's not going to get any better than that. Not to mention number 4 rush defense for LSU against number 3 rush offense from Auburn. So some real great storylines in that matchup. And finally, your Pitt Panthers will be going to Chapel Hill to take on the North Carolina Tar Heels, who've had a good season this year, 6-4 overall, 3-3 in conference. I think that's better than what they did last year. I think they had 5 wins last year, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. We're looking to repeat as ACC Coastal Division champions, but it's been a much different team. Last year we were run focused. We had a good defense, but not a great defense. This year our defense is spectacular, and it's really made up for the fact that we're number 88 in the country in scoring offense. We can't put the ball in the end zone. Last year against North Carolina, we put up 52 points. We had over 300 yards rushing. That's not going to be the case this year. North Carolina is on a bit of a schneid, but they beat Miami earlier this year. They've been known to put up, number one, a ton of points, and they're just a talented team. They do have a lot of really good players if you look at their roster, so I don't think there's any doubt it's still going to be a tough game. They are missing a bunch of starters, though. J.J. McCargo, Stacey Carter, who is actually their starter at center, and then Ratliff, their number one wide receiver, all going to be missing these games from a multitude of different injuries. Funny thing is, with Carter not playing, they actually have a better rated guy playing at center, just not a natural center, so it honestly may help them out. And the guy who's really going to benefit from that if they have good pass protection is Nathan Elliott. He's a very good quarterback, great ratings. He can sling the ball around. He threw for 443 yards against us last year. No doubt he could do that again if he gets plenty of time back in the pocket. And they don't have much of a rushing game, so I think that's something we'll have to watch out for. Kaiser Artis-Scott still nursing that return from the injury, but he'll be good to play. Kenny Pickett will be starting under center. He's been ruled available to play for this game, and Sean Wolfgang will be back in the lineup as well after sitting out the remainder of the previous contest. So it's going to be a big game for Pitt. We'll have to see how the offense comes out. They've struggled so much. If they can't get the running game going, Kenny Pickett will be relied on to have a great game. But he's done that when he's been called upon this season for the most part. So we'll see how things go. Let us know in the comments who's going to win the LSU-Auburn game. What will be the final score of that one? Can LSU stay undefeated, or will Auburn be the undefeated SEC champion? And what's going to happen in our game, of course, against North Carolina? Will it be upset alert like it was 2 years ago when they knocked us off, or will we stay with winning ways and potentially be very close to wrapping up a Coastal Division title? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Hail to Pitt. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.